Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at AP 11B from Chapter 12 workbook exercises. And in this problem, we're going to do similar to the last problem, the payroll journal entries, both to accrue the employee payroll liability and the salaries, expense, and withholdings, etc., and then also the payroll tax expense and that portion that the employer is going to have to pay directly. Okay. So this one's a lot simpler because it doesn't have us calculate by employee and sum all those up like we did last time and look at percentages, etc. This problem just gives us the information. But I did want to include kind of a breakdown of employer versus employee or employee versus employer portion of the taxes and all that so that we could get a feel for how it kind of breaks down, right? So gross pay tells us is 42,000, and again that's just the employee portion. That's the payroll piece. So there's nothing that has to do with the employer there. The federal income tax is 3780, and while businesses do pay federal income taxes, what we're talking about here is the withholdings for payroll specifically, and that would be for the employees, because the employees' earnings, right, that's the amount that they are taxed on. For a business, we'll have to calculate our business income later, and do a federal income tax return specifically just for the business. But when you see income taxes in relation to payroll problems like this, those are just going to be applicable. What you're doing is withholding and paying the government your employees' payments for their specific income taxes. Okay, so nothing employer related there. FICA tells us is 3213, and FICA is paid both by the employee and the employer, half and half. So that's where we start seeing the totals there. So the total amount to be remitted from the company is $60,426. Half will be paid by the employee, and then half will be paid by the employer. And then the FUTA and SUTA, which is 252 and 2268, is an employer-only portion. So the employees don't have to pay any of that employment taxes there. Okay, and that's our totals. And then it tells us to prepare these two journal entries, like I said. So this was November 15th. And the first thing we can do is just do salaries expense. That's going to be our debit and the expense that we are, as the business, are recognizing in total. So 42,000. And let's just link it in since we already did the calculations down there. Then we get federal income tax payable. We get state income tax payable. We have FICA payable. And finally, the residual portion that we're actually going to pay the employees is the salaries payable. So that's the actual cash, or the paychecks that the employees will receive. And we'll say to record employee pay and withholdings. So there's no health insurance in this one. That was something we saw previously. There's some other things that can get withheld as well. Things like the 401k withholdings or other types of retirement plans, things of that nature. Health insurance like we saw previously. But this one is just salaries and taxes, essentially. Okay, and no FUTA or SUTA, because those are just the employer portion there. Okay, so the total then should be, make sure that all, yeah, okay, I did the math right. Wait, I think I'm missing something. Oh wait, look at that, I messed that up. Okay, so FICA portion for the employee is just the 3213 there. So yeah, don't be like me, be careful there. That's the employee. The total is the 6426, but half of that's going to come from the employee and then half from the employer. Okay, I'm going to kind of just take some of this here and repurpose that journal entry, copy it over, and we'll say employee benefits expense now. I'm going to delete all that out. And we don't have the federal income taxes payable. We have the FICA payable, we have the FUTA payable, and we have the SUTA payable. Don't have salaries payable. That's only applicable for the employees. Just copy and paste that one up, and we'll say to record employer payroll tax expense. And so let's look at each individual component. So the FICA, again, careful, just do half of that, right? The employer portion, that's the 3213. Then the FUTA, and it's just telling us these amounts. In the last problem, if you watch the video there, we calculated it, based on percentages and all that. But here, we're just doing it based on what they tell us. Essentially, they would have already, they did the calculations already. All right, so we add all those together. And so our expense as the employer for having these employees for this specific, payroll period is $5,733. So again, unemployment taxes, Social Security and Medicare, these FICA taxes, half from us, half from the business, half from the employee. So those are the same amounts. And that looks like all we need to do for this one. If we wanted to really go on to the next steps like we did in the last problem, in 10B, there's all the actual remittances of these amounts and, crediting cash and debiting the payables to get rid of those payables as you actually make payments to the government and to the employees, and all the rest of it. But this problem just asks us to do that accrual entry on the payroll date. So that is the problem. All right. Thanks, everybody. We got one more video in the Chapter 12 Workbook Exercise Series, AP 19B. So I will see you in that.